You're welcome back. Well, according to NNPC, Nigeria is losing an average of 200,000 barrels of its crude oil production daily to theft. The GMD of the corporation has expressed its frustrations over this. Why does this seem to be persisting, and how can it be contained? Well, we'll discuss this and more with the president of Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Mr. Festus Osifo, who's joining us this morning. Good to have you,
Morning.
Mr. Osifo.
Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Yeah, thank you
So
so much.
one of
for having
many,
me.
many issues in the oil and gas industry is the issue of crude theft.
Yeah.
And even the GMD has said, well, they're working on it, but they haven't been able to find a way to solve this problem. And it is eating deep into our, our production, our revenue, and yet we're complaining and all that. Is there a way to solve this at all?
Yes, the issue of crude oil theft, it's actually a big issue in the oil and gas industry. And that issue is much more predominant in the onshore production facilities, because these facilities are located in land, and you now need to pipe the crude oil that is produced from the facilities via the pipelines to a flow station where you can now be talking about export. So most of these pipelines are not far from the surface. So in most cases, you do have this pipeline being vandalized. And when you have such vandalization, it results into crude oil loss. And these losses is quite enormous. Just as the GMD put it, it's something that is really enormous in such a way that in the oil and gas industry today, most of the IOCs, they spend a large amount of their money in trying to protect these pipelines. So it's really a big challenge. It's something that is relatively facing the industry today. And I think that with all stakeholders, coming together, and with the resolve of the security. Again, the oil and gas industry is operating in Nigeria. We know the security challenges that we face in Nigeria. So we are not operating in isolation. So it's a general national problem that we must sit down to tackle. But you don't have such majorly in the deep offshore areas where tankers do come in to load the crude and export abroad. So that is actually the major difference.
But you still have pipeline vandalism in the the residential, close to the residential areas.
Yes.
And it's all part of people trying to steal the petroleum products.
Yes. The crude oil vandalism today, we have the petroleum products, which is like, the PMS, the DPK. Some are still being piped through the pipelines, but majorly you have the crude that you transport from the production facility to the flow stations. So along that flow, so some of these pipelines do pass through some residential areas. So along that line, that is where you have this challenge majorly.
So what's the measurement infrastructure like? At some point you will have, some kind of measurement, process to know, what is being produced, and, that should actually help, in solving this issue.
I know. Measurement infrastructure really will not be able to solve it, because even if you measure from point one that you are producing, let's assume 50,000 barrels per day, and you feed it into the pipeline, as you pass it through the pipeline, what you are now receiving at the end of the day may become 40,000 barrels. So along the line, you may have some losses, and majority of these losses is as a result of vandalization. So even if you have measurement from point A and measurement at point B, it will not necessarily solve the problem. What will solve the problem is that, one, we must deploy technology. Technology is the key, and most of our pipelines, we should lay them, a bit deeper into the ground, because if you have a pipeline that is just like 2 meters from the surface, these the thieves, so to say, could bust the pipeline because it's just relatively closer to the surface. So that is just one of the challenges that we quite have in the oil and gas industry today. Today, the issue of security is really a huge one. That you have a particular IOC that have close to 300 security men, over 200 army that are guiding their onshore installations. You have NCDC and all.
They have to pay for.
Yes, you pay for them. And that is one thing that the PIB was not able to address. Because,
Now the
like as we have
PIA.
said, the PIA actually, yeah, you know, because we've had PIB for 20 years, so we keep saying
we're so used to
PIB. The PIA was not able to address. Because if you look at it clearly, there's a particular IOC that budgeted in 2020 $30 million for security.
$30 million.
The $30 million, you have some of these amounts budgeted to security vessels. You have some of these amounts budgeted to manning those security vessels, fueling those security vessels, as well as some other amount as well budgeted to the Nigerian Army, mobilizing men and women of the Nigerian Army. So at the end of the day, it's really affecting the industry greatly.
Okay,
then
so
we also have the issue of kidnap, for example. I mean, as part of the security issues in the oil and gas. It was reported that in 2020, 258 personnel in the oil and gas industries, you know, were actually kidnapped in the year 2020. And about 21 of these people as well, they were also killed. Yeah, both the employees of the IOCs and producing companies and their contracted personnel. So this is actually the report that came from 2020. So it's something that we really need to address.
It's another major thing, discussion that goes on in the oil and gas industry, which the PIA is supposed to, but I mean, I don't think it really takes care of it, is the issue of subsidy.
Yeah.
It's been a lingering conversation. When we look at the pros and the cons, the people say we need this subsidy so that at least it will reduce inflation, because once the price of petrol goes up, then everything goes up.
Yeah, true.
But the government is also saying if we free this money, it will help develop infrastructure. What is PENGASSAN's stand on this?
Yes, our stand has been very, very clear that when you are about removing subsidy, first of all, you must think about the masses. We have said that we are not against subsidy removal, but try and make our refineries functional, so that when you remove subsidy, the dollar component more or less will be eliminated. Because, I mean, you just read the report when I was listening to you a while ago, that we spent about 1.87 trillion in Q2. As trade deficit. We had a trade deficit of 1.87 trillion. The major reason we have that trade deficit is that we import PMS. If you check NIETI's report, that in 2019, NNPC, we imported about 20 billion liters of PMS. So when you check the amount of money it costs the nation to import PMS, that is one of the reasons we are in that kind of trade deficit. And again, if you import PMS, what do happen again is that this PMS is bought in USD. Yeah. So you are weakening your currency. So these are the major challenges.
Effect,
yes, it's a ripple effect. Yeah. So what we have said is that let us fix our refineries. And thank God today there is a lot of traction from the government in getting the refineries fixed. Yeah. So when the refineries are fixed, when we are producing, like when the 3 refineries are fixed, rather 4, because we have 2 in Port Harcourt. When you fix those refineries, we will be producing nothing less than 20 to 25 million liters locally. So if you add that to the Dangote refinery, that could give you something about 60, 70 million liters. So when you produce locally, then you can now say, let us go into full-scale deregulation. If we deregulate today, what we are simply doing is that we are exporting jobs. So the PENGASSAN position has been, let us develop our value chain. Today, we know how much, the oil and gas industry contributes less than 10% to our GDP. But if we develop the value chain, I could tell you that the oil and gas could be contributing nothing less than 30% to our GDP. Right. So that is what we have been advocating for over the years.
Okay, and you know, the world is moving towards cleaner energy right now. How is PENGASSAN preparing for this?
Yes, that was our advocacy when we were in the National Assembly. We advocated greatly before the National Assembly that the PIA must contain insertions whereby we will start doing research into new energy. We will start, today we know clearly that a lot of companies that are supposed to invest in the oil and gas, in Nigeria oil and gas industry, the IOCs, they have made a lot of policy statements on how they are divesting from the so-called oil and gas industry into new energies. So we must be ready and we must be prepared. So we advocated that, and that's why part of our advocacy that we are also going to seek before the National Assembly is that the 30% that you are keeping for frontier explorations, why won't you move this 30% into development of renewables? Because that is where the world is going. If you look at the recent report, the World Bank said that they will no longer invest or release money for oil and gas development anymore, but that in the developing nation, they could consider gas because gas is cleaner. Then if you look at all the reports from the UK to the Netherlands to Canada, they have all said that between 2030 and 2035, that they are going to cut down carbon emission between 50 to about 78%. So this is quite huge. And in cutting down these, then you know that it's going to affect the oil and gas industry. So our advocacy before the National Assembly was that a chunk amount of money should be set aside for development of renewables, because that is where the world is tilting towards.
But I mean, you're saying this after the PIB has been made the PIA. One would have expected you to speak to this before it was passed into law.
Like as I've said, that before the National Assembly, during the public hearing. So during the public hearing, it was still PIB. It wasn't PIA then. So in our position paper, that was our position. The position paper, I can share it with you. So that was what we advocated before the National Assembly.
Now that it was
but you know, there are multi-stakeholders with diverse interests and all that.
Right.
But now that it has been passed, we will advocate for an amendment. Let's assume we operate the law for the first 1-2 years. But after then, we are going to advocate strongly for the amendment so that Nigeria will be ready. Because the last report from World Economic Forum said that Nigeria, we are just about 35% are ready for the new energies that are coming. And that is very, very abysmal and is very, very poor. So we need to be set.
35%?
Yeah, I mean, that was the report from the World Economic Forum. So we can't really fault it.
For me, we always talk about subsidy now, and for PENGASSAN saying, because everybody is scared when the oil industry goes on strike, it affects everything. So I'm sure that's part of the considerations of the government, and subsidy keeps, and then the government keeps complaining we don't have enough money, and we keep missing out on infrastructure that we should have had, and we still keep paying subsidy. We don't know when our rehabilitation of refineries will be.
But there's a lot of work going on in that refineries today. I can attest to that because the Port Harcourt refinery, for example, they have concluded the 3D laser scanning and every other activities are going on. Then the Warri and the Kaduna was just sanctioned recently by the Federal Executive Council. So we are fully in support of that because we think that when the refineries are functional and when other value chains in the oil and gas industry is developed, we think clearly that is going to boost the economy.
Some action going on.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, and we do hope those actions will be implemented, will bear fruit in the short run.
Yes,
Thank you so much, President of PENGASSAN, Mr. Festus Osifo, for joining us this morning.
I
really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
We'll just switch over to the markets now. Will has been standing by to tell us how the markets was last week. Hello, Will.